Next story, I think was even kind of scarier, to be honest with you. Basically, there was this website, Tommy Misk, and it's a kind of a deep dive into how iPhone apps can tell many things about you through your accelerometer. So, if you're not really sure what an accelerometer is, it's basically this thing in your phone. Basically, it exists in iPhones and Android phones as well, and it tracks like your iPhone's movements and like if you tilt your phone or you move it around or your gyroscope, all these kinds of like motions of the phone all has data associated with it, and that's how you get these like interactive apps and AR apps and other things like that. And the article goes into a little bit of depth about how much data actually can be captured by this. And in iOS and in Android, there's no permissions for accessing the accelerometer. So an app developer automatically gets access to all this information whenever you're using the app. So the second you open up, X, Y, and Z app, it'll automatically, if the developer has coded it such, they can track all those different accelerometer motions. And so one little tidbit that came out of that article was I think one quote I've got here is there's also been some research to develop novel accelerometer applications, estimating heart rate, breathing rate, and even as a rudimentary audio recorder using just the accelerometer, which is just wild to me that you can guess these things based on just the accelerometer. Shows how good the accelerometer is, but also how, I guess, dangerous it could be as well. And so iOS lets any app installed access the data without permissions from the user. And you kind of get it. The same thing applies for Android. It's not only that, and it's not even apps. I saw that it could also be used in web apps as well, like Safari websites and things like that, that render on mobile. And so, I mean, at this point, what do you do, right? I mean, the fact that what that data can be done and then how it can be used and I guess massaged to basically figure out other things that you have no idea about, kind of scary. Hopefully, this is something that could get patched, or maybe iOS can do some kind of like a notification to opt into allowing it. Just like Zillow asked me to scan my local network, it would say, does Zillow need to access my accelerometer? I would say probably not, and reject it. And hopefully, people can take control back on a lot of these things. And so, yeah, kind of scary in general because you never thought an accelerometer would capture all this information. But did you guys pick anything else out from the article that seemed like it kind of stood out?
I think there are some hardware-related features that are available for all apps that are not restricted. Accelerometer probably is the more advanced, and some of the recent phones include barometer as well. And again, every app has access to it, and it doesn't require users' permission. End of the day, we have to get to a point where every hardware access should request users' permission. I think that's the only solution. Let the user decide what they want to do. By default, providing, and for those of you who are not familiar on how it works, accelerometer basically. People have studied the patterns of accelerometer movements. Put your phone in your pocket and start walking. There is a certain pattern on the readings. When you're running, there is a certain pattern. So when your watch says, "Hey, it looks like you're exercising," that means Apple has already studied the patterns of that accelerometer, and that is how it knows that you're running or exercising or jumping or whatnot, right? So how does a watch know that you all of a sudden fell down and try to call 911? It is basically a certain study of certain parameters. In this case, it's an accelerometer. It can tell you a lot of things, and there's a lot of positive benefits to it. But there, as you can imagine, several companies have used it for ads and whatnot to track what users are doing. And now, in conjunction with other things like a location, then there is additional information available. That means additional targeting options for the end users or for the advertisers. But end of the day, the real solution is when users have final control whether or defining what apps have access to it.
I think this is all goes to prove that we don't need Mark Zuckerberg to create a metaverse. We are already living in a metaverse. We've been living in a metaverse ever since, like you said, we've got these devices, and they're collecting data about data. And isn't that what Meta is all about? It's like everything, we know the initial collection of data, but then they're collecting data about that data, and that's what the metaverse really is. So they could have just kept their name to Facebook. We know what's going on here, and so yeah, it's messed up. It's something that it's interesting that all these things just are still just starting to come up to the surface. And look how many years all this stuff has been going on. I mean, it becomes, it almost feels like we're in quicksand, although I don't want to think negatively here, but it just feels like in some instances we've been in quicksand for a while. Now we're just figuring out, we're halfway in, you know. Hopefully there's time to get all the way out, but it feels like that every time we hear stories like this.
Yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend anybody who is paying attention to read through this guy's article, because it goes really in depth in a lot of examples. He'll talk about Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and different apps that track your stuff and how it's being used. And one thing that popped in my mind, I wish we had a slide for it, but I don't know if you guys remember, but a couple of years ago there was an article that came out about Uber, and what they were going to do is they wanted to do variable pricing based on your intoxication level. And so the way they were figuring this out was basically how you interacted with the app, how your accelerometer was using, if you were like holding straight or if you were kind of like swaying, and you coupled that with being, in proximity to a bar or like a drinking area, and then at a time of hour, and then how you're moving, how you're touching the app. Are you like on the buttons, or are you like off center or something along those lines? You put all these different data points together, and they could charge you obviously a premium because you kind of need a ride. The irony is the whole point of Uber, not the whole point, I guess, but one of the bigger points was it helped curb drunk driving. And now you're basically disincentivizing it because you're going to say that you're going to charge a premium for that. And, there's a counter argument. Maybe drivers don't want that in their car, or it could be a risk or a liability or whatever. But I mean, ultimately, I don't think it ever got implemented. And even if it did, you would have no idea, because the pricing is always just kind of whatever they feel like at a certain point. And there's no transparency in that. But that's another use case of that accelerometer data 100% being used to track your motions. And they, like Roger and Brent were saying, that like studies have been done on how these movements kind of interact. And if they just look at a bunch of like people between like 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., how they kind of interact with the Uber app, they can probably generate a couple different patterns and identify it, and then start making inferences that way, right? And you would have no way to really kind of curb that. So definitely accelerometer is kind of scary, which you didn't really ever realize or think about. But I can't recommend the article enough, because I thought it was really good. It goes through some, easy to understand concepts, and then there's like a deep dive at the end of it that goes through like more technical information if you really care to, go all in.
And talking about that, I thought this week or maybe last week, wasn't there a law that basically mandates some of these automakers to see if someone is intoxicated?
There was talks, I think it was, what was it, New York or something like that. So, I mean, I know they have like newer cars will have, they'll have cameras. I think I've seen in like some of those like auto driving systems, right? So like when you turn on autopilot or whatever, they have like infrared cameras that stare at you and basically make sure that you're focused and paying attention. But through that, you can probably also infer a lot of other things based on your activity and motion and stuff like that. I don't know how it gets implemented, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, there was either it got passed or it was in legislation phase, one of the two. I mean, obviously, I think noble concept to curb drunk driving is going to be good, but then how that data is being used to track, I guess, as you're driving. I mean,
yeah,
I guess a lot of people will think that they don't have much to hide there, but
yeah, I mean, how that information is collected and aggregated and used, and how do you know the accuracy of that information, and the facial recognition, plays a role there, and that opens a new can of worms.
yeah,
I just
100%.
wanted to throw in a real quick one, because when you meant that Uber story is really, I guess I can just say messed up. But I think there was another Uber story that just came out this week. I'm looking to pull it up because I know I posted it. I got this notification from the Wall Street Journal. The Justice Department sued Uber, alleging it charged wait time fees to disabled passengers who need more time to enter a car.
I mean, the accelerometer was probably moving in a different direction there for those people. But yeah, just I would say not the most ideal of them. I mean,
I just wanted to say that. I have no other words, because there are no other words needed for something like that.
Yep.